It's a title slide. Note the copyright. Just you can, as I said, the ERA can use the recording of this presentation. So this is a collection of slides, more from some places, fewer from other places, depending on how long I was there. We'll start in Oakland. Sacramento Northern had a yard at 40th and Shafter, which they closed in 1957, and that connected to the former interurban line, passenger line, to West Pittsburgh originally, then to Sacramento and Chico. The line has a 4.4% grade, and because of an unfortunate accident with a streetcar in the 1920s, I think, there has to be a locomotive on the end of the train facing Oakland. 651, 661, and 651 were dual voltage freight motors that ran at 1500, which was the southern part, and at 600 volts, which was the key system right here that we're next to. And those were the last survivors. This is 654, which then, after this closed, went up to Yuba City, Marysville, and is in, I believe, the Bay Area Museum. This is they had a Y connecting with the key system C line. Actually, we're facing onto Shafter Avenue, which has now been pretty much all obliterated by the Grove Shafter Freeway, or 580. And the nearest thing to transit is there's a stop at Rock Ridge on Bart. This is putting the freight train together. The caboose and a freight motor will be at the end. And this is a track arrangement. The 40th and Shafter Yard was on 1.5 city blocks, very tight space. Freight cars were brought from Oakland Army Base and other places by the Oakland Terminal, originally by Key System. And you see the Oakland Hills in the background. This is the Temescal. Now, those of you who studied electric utilities know that companies have to pay for demand. And since it was a huge electric bill to get the train to this point, they're waiting for the start of the next hour before leaving to minimize the electric bill. That's the Mountain Boulevard Freeway to the right, which is from time to time suffers major earthquake damage. This is almost on top of the Hayward Fault. This is switching at Port Chicago and Clyde, one of those places where they had an oil business. An ammunition ship blew up here in 1944 and pretty much devastated the town. It was never fully rebuilt. And a railroad, probably in the foreground, there were 3 railroads here: Southern Pacific, Santa Fe, and the Sacramento Northern. Sacramento Northern is owned by Western Pacific. This is West Pittsburgh, where to the left went to the ferry to cross the Sacramento River. The ferry basically became useless after about 1954. So the train would run to this point. I don't have a picture of it, but the Western Pacific would bring freight cars with trackage rights over Santa Fe to from Stockton to this point. They'd exchange freight cars as they're waiting for that train now. This is another view of the while we're waiting at West Pittsburgh. The line still extended electrified to Pittsburgh. When this closed, then there was a diesel-powered line for some years from Walnut Creek to Pittsburgh. Also, it should be noted that from Walnut Creek, Concord, and that area, BART now occupies the right-of-way. This is a fan trip. We're in Pittsburgh with no H. There's some notable rail fans there, Eldon Lucy and a bunch of other people. The observation car is from the Salt Lake in Utah. And the car in front, Sacramento Northern 1005, which was survived because a train went to the key system, and they used that during the war in return originally for train control equipment. And then after the key system decided to get rid of it, the Bay Area Electric got the 1005, which has now been, I think, fully restored up at the Western Railroad Museum. This is a Vala Vista curve, which was considered to be one of the sharpest curves on a U.S. Class 1 railroad. near Moraga. And you see people are all trying to find a place to take a picture. This is at College Avenue in Shafter, which is now literally underneath the BART station. All these buildings are gone. I originally was very young, lived not far from here. I think that apartment building is gone, but not from the freeway. And it was the number 6 trolley line, streetcar line crossed here until 1946. Now, we moved to the Key System. Key System ran from Oakland to San Francisco and had, when I saw it, 5 lines left, one of them truncated. It had a terminal in San Francisco. The overhead wire was actually for the 1500 volt or operation, or 1200 volt of the Southern Pacific, and the Sacramento Northern used it. At the end, and it was only a couple of years, the Sacramento Northern and the Southern Pacific red trains shared track on the Bay Bridge at the Key System, but unfortunately they both quit before the war. This is a picture on the bridge, and now of course this has all been ripped up and converted to roadway. So there was, they used the 1930s version of train control, which operated basically flawlessly, that kept the trains from colliding and other things like that, but it was a very advanced system when they put it in. This is at Bridge Yard. This facility was built in the late 30s as part of the Bridge Railway, and both the Key System and the Southern Pacific had maintenance facilities here, or light maintenance. The Southern Pacific building still survives. I believe this one has been subsumed by the expansion of toll plazas. This is where the Key System went under the Southern Pacific and goes on. All the lines run here past the old powerhouse towards the Key System shops, so the lines split. The A and the B line went south towards Oakland. And it was, I've heard of people who rode only the part as far as Bridge Yard, didn't realize that the system, that total change of character after Bridge Yard. And this is the old, they never saw track that they wanted to maintain. This is the truncated end of the A line at Oak, 12th and Oak. That's Alameda County Courthouse in the background. Two-unit train, which is the most the A line could take. The other lines could take 3 units. This is the B line where it turned off onto a private right-of-way built by real estate developers off of Grand Avenue. Safeway in the background. This is the end of the B line up in the middle of, you could still trace where it was. That's a little difficult, but it was just, people use this for commuting. It was quite a nice neighborhood when you had the train in your backyard. You could ride it to San Francisco for your job. This is on the C line, which is ran straight when the A and the B diverged to the right and the E and the F diverged to the left. And then when it got to this point, it originally just ran as a shuttle. So this is also was shared with the number 11 streetcar line. And this is one of the few places where they had good track, which apparently bought the rail from the San Jose system when they went away on. This is Piedmont Avenue. This is where the number 10 line or 11 diverged and ran up a right of way up the hill, and then the Key System train is trying to make it down to a right of way, which this is the end of. The Key System actually intended to build a line to San Jose, and this would have been on that alignment. Interestingly, that when streetcars ran, the number 12 line ended almost diagonally across the street. The streetcars quit in 1948. The E line ran to the Claremont Hotel. There's still a gap in the tennis courts where the train used to lay over. The straight-sided units up through 100 through 124 were rebuilt basically from the old 650 center entrance cars. The later cars all had slightly sloping sides, and they were built new, but they used old truck and equipment from the 500 and 600 series. This is one of the newer cars. Uh, but they were all compatible. The 1906 cars and the 1938 cars could all MU together, and they were all pretty slow, especially these because the center truck was not powered. This is a spot where in the 1930s, Southern Pacific, which had competing lines, and the key system agreed to truncate the key system line in the background. This track that they're on is or next to is the former Southern Pacific, which was, you could see their catenary, were poles where they had catenary, which they were still using for freight for one customer. So the key system had to, in 1940, had to hurriedly build a track, this third track, in order to access the F line, which was their heaviest line. This is on the former Southern Pacific F line beyond in Berkeley. And you note the catenary and the other features are quite different from the way the key system constructed things. And this was originally a steam railroad, and then they ran the red cars on it. They built around 1910, electrified. You'll see those later. Those didn't die with the system. This is the end of the F line. The Southern Pacific continued down the hill and then had two other lines originally joined into it. So they had two loops through Berkeley and El Cerrito and so on and so forth, Berkeley and Albany. But this is where the key system ended. The tunnel that they ran through, which you'll see later, is been converted to highway use. This is Bridge Yard looking from the tower towards Oakland. You could see on the right, there's a key system train running on third rail. They had system where automatic conversion. They had originally a little thing sticking out, a little wand sticking out from the car for the old signal system. They used that when it hit the board to drop the pantograph. And then here they've had a device that turned the third rail shoes up and then raised the pantograph. So it's all done at speed, unlike the North Shore line. Well, that was done at speed too, but a different way. The 1011 was a work car with side rods. This is the key system line car. This is at the museum. This was originally built as a steam railway coach for Leona Heights and somehow survived. This is 1001. That's one of the freight motors that the key system used originally to bring freight cars to the Sacramento Northern, the 40th chapter. And the cars in the background hadn't run since 1950 when they shortened the A line. This is another shop switcher. And in the background, you really can't see it, but you can see there's a passenger car that was a Santa Fe terminal in Emeryville. Was right next door to the key system. I threw this in for the New York people. These are two of the elevated cars that were brought west to run on the Shipyard Railway. And they remained on the key system property until a year or two or so after. The car on the right is from Saskatoon. And these cars are now at the Western Railway Museum. And I think they all got there safely, unlike some of the earlier cars. But I just put this in so that New York people could get at least a little bit of exposure. The 271 originally came from Pennsylvania, I think Lehigh Valley, and the key system bought it quite early. The notable feature, these cars were used as shuttles for the train service, is that these cars could go faster than anything else on the system, like 55 miles an hour, whatever, which was on key system's horrible track was quite an achievement. And they gave us dispensation to run it as far as Bridge Yard on a couple of fan trips. This is at the mouth of the tunnel on the F line. And again, the 271 is at the museum in the Bay Area. And this is meeting a train on the B line right of way. So now, anybody want to ask questions at this point? Bob, you still awake?
I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. The key system cars, were those built from scratch or were they rebodied old cars?
The
I,
earlier cars were rebodied up till the square ones were rebodied 650 series. The later ones were new bodies, but using old mechanical components, what I've been told. They
okay.
may have built some new trucks or so on, but it was all compatible with the original key system, wood key system cars built in 1903.
Okay. Yeah,
So
that's the
now,
only question. And the other thing, someone answered that the line ran overhead in Oakland, but it ran third rail into the over the
oh, and
bridge.
the bridge. Yeah, I forgot to mention that. Yeah, they had third rail at 600 volts on the bridge and overhead wire. And no one knows why the wire was left up around Bridge Terminal because it had no use. You saw that in the early picture. So the Sacramento Northern actually ran on 600 volts and on third rail, and then on the 1200 on the overhead to get across the bridge. A little more efficient that way. Uh, Also, Sacramento Northern cars were way, way faster than anything else. So the train control had to keep them at check. The It's said that the heavy Southern Pacific cars were not really compatible with the bridge, that they were too heavy. But I don't know. That's just maybe a old wives' tale. So this is on the B line. Uh,
Was there much of a protest locally when the rail service was taken off the bridge, or was it just sort of accepted?
no, it was protests. There was not a big protest, not enough to make any of the politicians want to do anything about it. They talked about keeping the two lines to Berkeley, but then by that time they were already in the process of formulating plans to build BART.
Hmm.
So it was, I think they've kind of decided that they'd focus on getting BART built, which they were able to do. And that replaced kind of the core functions, the key system, be it San Francisco to Oakland, San Francisco to Berkeley. I didn't mention that under the F line, there were where I took that picture of the three tracks. That's where BART was goes underground to go through Berkeley. Berkeley paid for the subway, by the way. It was otherwise going to be elevated through Berkeley, and it's probably one of the better things that they ever did. Uh, and then Oakland got a subway, and then to the east or the south or whatever way, if you go to East Oakland, BART basically recaptured, although on different alignment, all the territory that was lost when the A line was truncated. And then a lot more because it got to Hayward, which is the limit of the streetcar system, and now it's into San Jose, which was never connected by an electric interurban on the East Bay. So
Okay, Clark, one more question from the audience is what parts of those old key system lines have they survived into BART or have they survived into the AC Transit Express bus lines?
uh, the express bus line, no, I don't know anything about that. The part well, Sacramento Northern right of way on Shafter Avenue and a little bit up to Rock Ridge. The Sacramento Northern went up the hill and to the right, and the BART went through a tunnel at Rock Ridge.
Hmm.
And of course, on BART was built on 8th, which is, I think, 8th, yeah, where the Southern Pacific had its tracks originally. The key system was on 12th, but the BART has stations at 12th and 19th, and 19th was a place where the Southern Pacific used to serve, and the key system was on 22nd in Oakland. So there was a lot of overlap, but not usually in the same places. So the key system lines, the B and C lines, there's nothing there of BART, but it's on the or the E, but on the F and the A, there was parts of they're on a similar or on the same alignment. And of course, the BART tunnel was in quite a different place than the bridge. It was quite, it got direct from Oakland rather than having to go north to the bridge and then jog across the bay.
I have a small comment on that, just on that thing about the Southern Pacific cars being too heavy for the bridge. That couldn't have been true because today's tractor trailers are 80,000 pounds or over.
Yeah,
I know.
I don't think it was the case, but there was also vibration and other issues that might have. But I've never seen anything substantive on that. I do know that the bridge, especially the eastern span, was not as strong as they intended it to be, which we found out in the Loma Prieta earthquake. As also that span was done in by rust, but that again was just a rumor from some of the inside people. I mean, we have the same problem in Boston with the Mystic River Bridge, rust. So I can't understand. Try that again because I need to keep moving. So, Bob?
Yeah, I'm gonna mute everyone now. Please post your questions in the chat. I am now gonna mute everyone so only Clark can speak. Questions in the chat, please.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right. Can you still hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So the San Francisco Municipal Railway ran 5 lines that still survive, 3 through the Market Street, the tunnel Market Street to go, and then 1 on the Sunset Tunnel on the N line, and then the J line ran on the surface. The B and C line also ran on the surface, but the B line was truncated all the way to the beach, and was probably the best line actually. This is another picture in the same area, the B line. They did a lot of traffic with sailors, as did the A line on the key system. And this is the car barn that they had. This is the Municipal Railway built this. The other one in Geneva was something they inherited from the Market Street Railway. You notice that they built all the track with the 1 row of bricks around the rail. And you could see downtown in the background without very many high rises to the right of the streetcar. This is on the C line, which only ran a couple blocks, so it was effectively a cutback. And they've used the slightly newer cars, which have been converted to door cars. All the older cars on the B line and then some on the J and N were gate cars. The only gate cars to survive after the B line closed were 130 and 140. 130 was converted to a wrecker, and then it was later, much later, converted back to passenger use and is now on the Muni. Smallwood, a guy named Smallwood saved the seats in his basement. So when they came to restore the car to passenger service, he brought the seats back. He ran the shops at that time. This is further out on Balboa. Now there was the newest streetcar on the Market Street Railway was on Balboa. This is at the end of the playland at the beach, the end of the B line. The N car sitting there was a tripper. It made 1 trip out on the B line and then went back into the town and then on the N line, because a lot of the N line cars came from Geary Street Car House. When that changed, the N and the J had an awful time getting cars to the line, had to turn at 11th and Market to come back. This is downtown on the B line, the C line, B line on Geary Street. One of the problems with Geary Street is they had a lot of traffic, and they've done a one-way thing. The Geary Street line was never converted to trolley bus. It still runs buses, articulated buses. This is another view of the Geary Street at Powell. You could just see the cable car tracks at the lower left of the image. This is fan trip, unfortunate occasion, which was the last day, after the last day of the Geary Street line. So there were 2 trips made, one with a PCC and one with a conventional car. And this is the 1040 running on the now abandoned B line to the playland at the beach. There was a week, because I was there, we did ride PCCs on the B line. They were running, but that was, I think that was only for a very short period of time. The the lines all ended at called the East Bay Terminal or the whatever, the bridge terminal. And originally the cars ran down Market. Now they do run down Market again. In the background's Marmon Harrington trolleybus. And this is an in-car going to, and that's where the key system at its terminal. This is also right at Mission Street and in front of the bridge terminal. This is at the terminal. 1005, the 1001 through 5 were experimental cars. They weren't allowed to use the PCC patents, so these cars never did. They're called the magic carpet cars. If anything, they rode more smoothly than any of the PCCs. They had a hand controller. After they got some PCCs from St. Louis to replace the older cars, sometimes called Iron Monsters, they decided to get a few more and get rid of these because they were non-standard. So one of these survives, at least at the museum. There may be more. This is one of the first high-rise of the new high-rise construction that started in San Francisco. A lot of these other buildings date from 1906. Some of them got burned out, had to be, some survived without burning. But this is the fire after the 1906 earthquake consumed most of the buildings in this area. This is the end of the California Street cable line, back when it still had side grip. And you can see in the background the ferry building, at the proximity. Streetcars didn't reach this far down Market at that time, but they do now. This is the Powell and Market line back when Washington Jackson was running. And there's a bus there. It says Cow Palace. I think that's for some kind of event. That's one of the Mac buses that they got. We called them that they leased, which enabled them to get rid of the B and the C lines. This is on Washington Street, further out on the Washington Jackson Powell Market line. This track is now gone. This line quit in September of 1956. And as I said, it goes only as far as Hyde Street, and they make the turn. This is the turn back at 11th of Market. This is where cars had to reverse in order to get from Geneva Car House to the end in the J line. 130 in the background, which the last of the gate cars, has already been converted to use as a wrecker. This is a typical Market Street shot taken near 11th. The Art Deco building in the background is still there. A lot of the buildings actually you see on the photos are still there. It's surprising how many, considering what's happened in the downtown. This is at DuBose. This is the junction with the N line goes to the right. And now, of course, after they built the subway, there's a connection here, but the N line runs underneath and comes out about a block from here. And there's track through here, but it's only was used as a temporary yard during the when they had the trolley festivals. And you could see, not that clear, but you could see a lot of transit vehicles. And this is before they built the freeway overpass right here at Octavia Street. And has now been torn down. So you could take this picture again if you get the right car there. And the ferry building, the freeway in front of the ferry building may or may not be there, but it's now gone also. This is on the N line when they make the transition from Cole to Irving Street before they make a jog to Judah. And this is near Kezar Stadium, which used to be able to ride the N line to see the 49ers play. This is on Judah just after they make the corner from Irving, and then they run straight out Judah to the beach. They had 10 double-ended cars, and they converted them to a single-ended operation. And now they're back, the ones that survived, a couple didn't, are back to being operable as double-ended cars. There's another view on the N line through shopping districts and so on. You can see the ocean to the left. And it's kind of hazy. And this is the end of an end line during the football, and they kept some cars here to wait for the game to end. And since they didn't have enough room for 3 cars, 1 car had to go around the loop every time a service car showed up. The loop configuration is still the same. Buildings have changed. The Mar Motel, I think, has come and gone, but now there's some boutique hotels. This neighborhood has gone way up. This is on the J line in Mission Park, and this was built, and then right of way. There's some steep hills on Church Street that were not really suitable for streetcar operation. But when they were building it, they built it on the edge of the park. It's still there. It runs here. This is where they come back onto Church Street. This is after they built the Y. The J and the M line were not set up for single end cars, and that had to happen before they could retire the last of the Iron Monsters. There's another view on a J line, Mac bus in the background. I mean, a white bus in the background. And this is another gate car. This is before the Geary Street line closed. This is the entrance to the tunnel, the Market Street tunnel. You could still get into the tunnel from the surface here, but it's totally different. They had to reconfigure all of this in order to build the subway, but they did leave connections, and they were used. The trolley bus on the right is on the number 8 Castro. That has been replaced by a streetcar line now, the historic streetcar. So anyway, this is the other end of the Twin Peaks Tunnel, and now this has been converted to some ugly station, so you can't see the original appearance of the tunnel. And they always did this for Christmas decoration. And this is the end of the L line. This loop was built, I think, in the 30s. The L line used to end in a stub right at the ocean. And then they built a loop about 3 blocks to get to where they're about a block from the zoo. This is on the K line, which was the only way that you could get to Geneva Car House in those days. Now the M and the J are all connected with the K line out at the car house and so on, Geneva, and there's a BART stop there also. This is a view on the M line on private right of way that's built. There's still talk of upgrading the M line to kind of a subway type operation. So I don't know if anything will come of that, but it's possible. Now, the M line did not run for about 5 years, from 1939 to 44, because of lack of ridership, but then they restored it, and it's become, when they built San Francisco State, it's become a major line. This is their line car out at the end of the M line. And this is L car on the K line going back after rush hour to the Geneva Car House. Okay, we'll break here.
Okay. I don't see no questions. You've explained everything.
Okay.
Outstanding. No comments from Peter Strauss, who is longtime Muni. So I think you're doing well. Go ahead.
Yeah, I know Peter. We can discuss it in private later. All right. So this is Yuba City. You can see that from there. And the Bernie car belonged to Bay Area. It actually ran once in San Francisco, but had railroad wheels, cracked a flange because they had railroad wheels. This is the Interurban ran. They had a branch to Yuba City. I made a branch to Calusa, and the other branch the main line went in the direction of Chico. And they had a streetcar operation which quit just before the war, which ran across the bridge. Now this is in an industrial area. It looks sort of like it could be a small town streetcar. It would be, but this was always just freight where this is. But this is the track. It's unfortunately now abandoned, that goes to the bridge. The bridge was actually rebuilt after major flooding in the early 50s, but it still says Northern Electric, which was the name of the original line. Now, the British Columbia Electric 1225 was dropped off here on its way to the Orange Empire for a couple of days for a fan trip, and it ran well for about a day and a half. The rest of the time, then we had to pull it with a freight motor, but it covered all the industrial tracks. I guess because of cheap power rate and some equipment that wasn't quite worn out, they kept this electric into the 60s before they. This is where the Sacramento Northern main line actually ran under the Western Pacific and through town, but they had abandoned that. And so Sacramento Northern had to use the Western Pacific main line, which is right here. And that little piece of the main line was electrified, which is always fun to see from one of the Vista domes. And we were able to actually run this car on the Western Pacific main line and the Bernie. This is switching Western Pacific main line or next to there. It's got cars on both ends trying to do something. And this is the 653. I believe this one is in at Orange Empire. All three of these survived. The three motors that they had left after they closed the electric operation in the Bay Area. And this is in the yard at Yuba City. So, okay, now lesser known. Pacific Coast Aggregates in Davenport, California, they had a narrow gauge mining type of railroad to bring aggregates to the place where they could get it onto the Southern Pacific. They had a passenger car, and they bought this from someplace in Alaska. The bus on the right is Bill Billings bought an old Greyhound bus in the 1930s, and we rode down here on that. So we got a chance to visit this otherwise virtually unknown, and they had a couple of these motors, and they had this passenger car to bring the workers to the mine, which had a chain drive, and it's kind of scenic up there. It's in Davenport. It's just north of Santa Cruz. And Pacific Coast Aggregates. In the old days, we used to drive through there. The whole town was gray, covered with emissions from the plant. Now I think Davenport is kind of a hippie place. And this is one of their battery-powered mining locomotives to break stuff out of the mine. And that's the mine entrance. I don't know when this actually stopped operating, but eventually did, like most things. And I think they trucked it out or built a conveyor belt. Then I'm not sure that this is active anymore. Now, another one we haven't seen much of, Kennecott Copper. They had a tremendous railroad here, and in the days before they could use big trucks. And they had trains running everywhere. It's like a model train set some way. I think I have to remember how we got there. We had a train. I think we put an observation car on one of the passenger trains and rode it to Salt Lake City. And then, but it was fairly modern when we were there. They had some fairly modern locomotives. It was quite heavy, just to get the copper out of there, or the ore. And these were the locomotives to the right were used to take these cars down to the interchange with the railroad. You could see it was quite a bit heavier than any interurban. And they had some fairly modern equipment too. Now, we'll go to Los Angeles. San Pedro was when the Transit Authority took over. They had San Pedro aligned to Bellflower, which is a truncation of the Santa Ana line and the Long Beach line. The Bellflower line went fairly quickly. San Pedro had very little ridership, so that went, and then we were left with the Long Beach line, which lasted until the early 60s. And these are the red cars at Southern Pacific. Everything's the same except in Southern Pacific they had pantographs, and they had these sliding screen doors rather than the wooden doors. This is at the end of the 4 tracks. They had a 4-track right of way with a Watts local line, which didn't have any slides of that here. I don't know why. And this is right where the freight tracks turn off to the right, and the passenger cars went to the left up on streets up to get to 6th and Main at the terminal. There's another view of the San Pedro train at Watts. You could see the Watts Tower to the left, and you could see in the background the headlight of a locomotive. That looks like it was a freight motor. Later on, it was all dieselized. So they were still using Pacific Electric type freight motors when it was there. Again, another view of San Pedro Station. And this is, there were 2 yards, Morgan and, let's see, there were 2 yards at the end of the Long Beach line. And this is the yard that was more remote. That they did what passed for a maintenance shop. They didn't have a maintenance shop after they got rid of the electrified track that went over to their shops, which are further to the north. And they also had buses here. You could see that they were starting to, this light green and dark green came from the private operation that had taken it over from Pacific Electric before the Lambda bought it. There's another view of the line beyond the end of the Long Beach line. This is not passenger service. This is the normal. This is where cars from the Long Beach line laid over. The new Long Beach line makes a big loop, but it doesn't get this far to the north. And there to the left is one of the Hollywood cars that they used, of the type that they used on the Watts local line, which ran from Watts to downtown on the outside track. This 499, I don't know whether that survived. This is just after, sometimes it rains in LA. And this is Long Beach. I think at this point, there's now track here again. On Long Beach Boulevard, I think that's what it's called, that goes until it gets up to the private right of way. This is one of the PE portable substations. And this is a view in the yard at Watts. A couple more of the 5050 series cars, now numbered 1802 and now redundant because they had ceased running the Watts local line. The Watts local lines were just like big streetcars, or interurban, a very light interurban. And these are the wire greaser cars because unlike any other place, the Pacific Electric used steel shoes, and they had the wire had to be greased. This is a view on in downtown LA near the 6th and Main. There was a stretch of dual gauge track that they shared with the streetcars. And this is the turn going into 6th and Main Station, about a block north of where the S line turned to go to the west. And this is the platform at 6th and Main, the San Pedro car, and some other things. The streetcar lines, surviving 5 streetcar lines, were the S line. Now this is late because the S line did not have any kind of turning loop until a couple years before they stopped running. And then before that, they ran H3 cars, which were conventional cars like this. And so these ran quite late. I think they were still running this with these in 58, but before they quit, they managed. You could see in the foreground remains of dual gauge. No, it's a dual gauge. Yes, dual gauge crossing. So originally there was both PE and this is downtown on 7th and I don't know, Maine or near, not Maine, but somewhere in that area. So the S line was tethered to conventional cars until very close to the end of service. They had one line, the V line did not go downtown. It was sort of a L-shaped line that crossed all the other lines. And this, those cars to the right are, I think those are H4s and these are H3s. I don't know which, but these are the older style with no, the California type cars. They had no windows in the end sections. This is at the last remaining car house. Now they had some post-war PCCs, so they ran basically on the P line with a Pico. That was their best line. This is another view downtown. And then the R line ran into a pretty nice neighborhood. Sometimes they ran from a really bad neighborhood or not so good neighborhood to a really good neighborhood. And this was in the northwest part. They were so Whittier Boulevard to Brannock. I don't know where Brannock is. We might be at Brannock. There's a Key System line truck in the background. A nice pre-war truck. This is one of the few pieces of work equipment I saw. And then the J line. This is where the J crossed the V line on Central, which is, and then the Pico line ran sort of across town. I don't put maps into this program because it'd be too long. Now, we want to break here. Anything about LA? Anybody still there?
Yep. Hold on. Do you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, there've just been a couple comments. 499 is an Orange Empire is 498. And let's see. 653 is at Paris. So I'm not sure that
Yeah, I
think
said
saw
that.
LA. Yeah, so all right, no other comments. So go ahead.
Okay, this is a 1958 trip east by train. I went to LA just, and then rode the Sunset Limited to El Paso. Basically, El Paso consisted of a big loop line and then a branch off that the cars had to back in one direction to get to the car house. So they could go forward to the car house, but they had to go backwards to get back to here. And this is in Mexico. So the line was, I don't know, it was pretty heavily patronized. They had all just side seating to make it easier to clear customs, but they had to go through customs twice on every trip. This is in Juarez. The track in the foreground belongs to the National Railways. I saw a diesel switcher here at one point, but this is in Juarez, and the car is decorated. The other side says El Paso welcomes you. And then this is pretty much the same place back at the beginning, and you can see at the right, you probably can't see it, is the track that goes off to the car house. Various people advanced various theories about why they kept this line, but they did. This is at the car house. There used to be a bunch of scattering of single track lines. There were a lot of single track and siding type lines. This was not a big system that this was part of, but the car house remained. And like San Francisco, El Paso had 2 trolley poles on their PCCs. I don't know of any other place that did that, but San Francisco and El Paso. And some of these cars have been restored, and I understand they're back in operation, not in the same location. Now, St. Louis Public Service stopped in St. Louis, and at the time I was there were Grand and Jefferson were running, as was University Clayton and Delmar and the line to I'll think of it in a minute. Anyway, this is the Jefferson line, which was one of the first of the crosstowns to close. Now, Jefferson and Grand were quite heavy lines, and Grand and Jefferson actually came together on one end. So this is at the other end of the Grand line. There's a water tower to the right. There's a kind of, St. Louis is famous for those. This is one of the 1500 series, which looks like it could be running on the Wellston line, but I didn't see any of these run. These were their only all-electric type. I understand these were all electric. You see the doors are clamped shut without standy windows or other. They're in the older design body-wise. This is a Wellston. If you'd go in Google Maps and try to even find this spot or any of the buildings or anything around here, good luck. I don't think there's anything left of this place. This is on Delmar, near, actually not too far from Union Station, on like a Sunday morning. And now here, I understand that I think our tracks are back with the St. Louis streetcar, if that ever really becomes viable. This is at the edge of St. Louis, and then that's University City beyond, just where the money starts. There's no money in St. Louis. This is on the University Clayton line before you get to the start of the right-of-way. It's not too far. This runs parallel to Delmar, but several blocks over. And I understand that this line was truncated at some point, and the stub of it ran on the street. This is at the end of the University line. The Clayton line continues. So they have a loop set up so they could run shuttle cars, or they could run from here out or from here in. So it's a double-ended loop. And this is the loop. The light rail line has a station not far from here, actually, a couple stations, but I couldn't tell exactly where in relation to this. It's only like a couple blocks. And then this was over the railroad right-of-way, I think the Wabash, but I'm not sure that they had at the end of the 11 line. And then they had the Hodiamont line, which was the last to survive, which was lots and lots of private right-of-way. But by itself, it wasn't a viable system. And here's a picture at the car house at which I understand still exists as a bus yard. Snow removal equipment. And then this is their shops, which I've looked up how to get there a couple of times. I immediately forget it. But I got there. You could look through the fence. They had a bunch of equipment there. And you could see in the direction of downtown, actually. And these are cars, 1775. This is a car, a lot of the cars went to San Francisco, the newer ones. This car is going to go to Shaker Heights. And it's already, they did the painting in shops in St. Louis. Okay, this is probably a good place. Any questions, Bob?
No questions.
No questions, okay. The Kansas City, Cotton Valley, and Western, I didn't actually see it run, but I got out there, and that was not easy considering what happens when you're under 25 and want to rent a car. They won't rent a car to you. So they had this freight motor. It was pretty much a semi-defunct operation. It had only one trolley pole left on it. So I don't know how much it actually operated, but at least I got there to view it. And this car is beyond redemption. So, Chicago Transit Authority, I didn't make a point of covering that too extensively, but I was, of course, very interested. This picture is taken from a North Shore train. If those that hadn't ridden the North Shore, the conventional cars have a drop-down window which you could get to in the rear motorman's cab, and it would make a perfect platform for pictures. Now the main difficulty was getting something decent with Kodachrome film. But this train is probably going up to, and this is a yard. I don't know the name of it, but it's near, it's off the L at, or was off the L at somewhere near the junction of the Brown Line, as you now call it. This is further north where we're up on an embankment and where the CTA got possession of this from, there was a railroad that ran freight, and I think they made a deal. And these, of course, are the rebuilt PCC cars. And they still had a locomotive up at Howard Street or near there, and which had regular use from what I could tell, because there was somebody down in this at this point that was getting coal. That's my understanding. But we wouldn't forget the Lake Street Elevated, which of course wasn't elevated here, before they moved it up onto the Chicago Northwestern Embankment. Now, I did get to see, I went down to 77th and Vincennes, so I did see a few things, but nothing seemed operable. This is, unfortunately, this is an experimental pre-PCC, which I think doesn't exist anymore. Maybe somebody knows if any of this stuff exists. And one of the PCC cars, you notice the door configuration with the third door in the middle. They had still had operable overhead wire, and they had the motor to move stuff around. That looks like snow removal and white buses, dead white buses, and a dump car and a trolley bus. I believe this is a trolley bus. You can see the room for the two poles, and a center entrance car of some kind. But I didn't see much else. I had another roll of film here they gave us a tour that got lost. So now the North Shore, Chicago, North Shore, Milwaukee. We're here at Dempster Street, I believe. And this is as far as the CTA gets. This is loading people headed north from Milwaukee. Note that the sides were painted, the fluting of these cars is painted on. And this is where the cars were parked on the elevated and at Roosevelt and Road. I think this piece of the L may be in use for actual, but at those points, at this time, it was the end point for the North Shore. This is at, can't remember, but it's the station. One of the few stops of the station building is on that side. The wires tell me, I think this is a train going towards Chicago, but I always have to go through and figure out which side the high tension poles are to figure out what way that's going. This is the electroliner, of course, which has made a point of riding. I came to the North Shore about 4 or 5 times before they shut down. This is at Tower KO, and this is a train, probably a Mundelein train, but I'm not sure, with a converted dining car on the front. They use the older equipment. And then there's a freight motor coming, I believe north. The Chicago Northwestern, one of the railroads is right over there. Oops. And this is coming up to Southampton Junction, I believe. That's what we're talking about. Another dining car. And this is a Mundelein train. And this is on the Mundelein line. I think this is a Sioux interchange, one of the ex-Oregon Electric freight motors. And they'd bring cars down here in the morning and then do their switching while was fewer trains on the Mundelein. This is taken from the back of a Mundelein train. This is another single car on the Mundelein line, likely going to just to Lake Bluff. And then people want to go to Chicago or Milwaukee would have to change. This is at Mundelein. Motorman is taking a stool from the back to the front. And I noticed that this car is in use. It's still a combine. I don't think they were using it as such. This is on the, this is a car going to Lake Bluff. This is not, you could ride this, but it's not part of either the Mundelein or the main line. It was the trains that went to Lake Bluff to lay over used this track and came to this point. This is, I don't normally show track pictures, but this is the connections the main line crossed, and then the original connection to the shoreline went on these tracks here. But the shoreline is gone, so all the further they could get is Lake Bluff. This is the work car on the main line, about ready to turn left to go to Lake Bluff and the other Lake Bluff. And then we're headed into the Lake Bluff under the Chicago Northwestern. This is on the what was left of the shoreline to get to the shops, which is considerable distance south of the I don't really have any idea how I got here, but I did. I might have ridden a train, somebody, but I don't have any specific memory of doing that. This is near Lake Bluff, electroliner. And another picture in the same area, Chicago Express. And another picture in this area of the, I think we're coming out north of that now, and we're coming up towards, not North Chicago Junction, but we're getting closer. This is at the Naval Station, and this is where the North Shore had stored freight motors and also brought in a fair amount of freight here at the Great Lakes Naval Station. They had these three motors tied together to be another, more powerful than a single. And then this freight motor was supposed to have some battery operation. And there's the other Oregon Electric, one that had this streamlined look that they got from Oregon Electric. And then there's a few old express cars in the background. I didn't get to see this out on the line. Now, and then this is just past North Chicago Junction, where the electroliner is going through on this track. Some of the buildings that were here then are still there. The smokestack, I don't think, is. And then this is the work car again, which was built purposely as a work car, not rebuilt from something else. And this is at Wauhegan, I think. This is where they're adding some cars to our train, which they would do sometimes the southbound direction. And this is on the north of there. You could see the whole difference. The whole operation is wooden poles. They still operated it sometimes north of 90 miles an hour. Because if you could ride in the front, I think you could see how fast they were going. I don't remember, but there was a seat in the front, which was perfect for rail fans. This is at Milwaukee National, I think. And they had a little facility here and more of the old express cars to use for various things. This is on the street in Milwaukee. Now, what's notable about this shot is everything to the right of that sidewalk is gone, as there's now an expressway running, I think depressed, but running right along parallel to this. And this is the terminal at the end with a view of the Hotel Schroeder. So if you wanted to stay any place with a view of traction, this is one place you could stay. Now, okay, any questions?
No, because anything that came up as a question, the Chicagoans on the show answered them.
Good.
I did have one comment. The remark from one of our board members, Andrew Ludasi, he's never seen such good slides from the 50s and 60s. What camera or what processing did you use to get these slides to look so good?
These were primarily Kodachrome by Kodak, and I had an Exacta with a 3.5 millimeter lens. I also had a telephoto, short telephoto, which a lot of people didn't have.
Okay.
But the Exacta had wonderful optics. So it was made in East Germany, but they still they had great optics. And,
okay. Very good.
Okay, the Milwaukee Electric and whatever, the TMERNL, they had this sort of leftover operation of a streetcar. The guy was a little annoyed when I pressed the bell. You could press a button and the streetcar would come and pick you up and then take you to the power plant. And this 882 was a Milwaukee Electric. I mean, that was streetcar is my only real. And they had a bunch of the Lakeside power plant. They burned a lot of coal, so they actually had an electric operation that ran some distance and over to the North Shore. But I never really connected up with that. The only place I got was here because I could ride a city bus to get to here. And they had a whole collection of equipment, freight motors. They had, I'm not showing everything, but work equipment. And I don't know why they had a pantograph like that. This just looks like something out of Canada, but anyway, they did. And here they're working with some freight cars. So L3, L9 is, I understand that a number of these survived either at East Troy or some other places, but this was what I saw. So the streetcar was sort of on demand, would make a move, and then I was able to get at least visit it once. Oh, I don't know when they stopped using the streetcar and when they got rid of the electrification, but I think it stayed a while. Now, Illinois Central, I rode it, didn't take a lot of pictures. This is a train at one of the endpoints. I think I probably have it somewhere where it is, but wonderful old cars, but I didn't spend a lot of time with it. And the South Shore line, this was their yard in South Bend. But they had rebuilt and unrebuilt cars and an old express car. I'm not sure whether it originated with them or came from Indiana. I'm not sure because it's got that kind of a buffer on it that some of the interurban cars had. This is on the streets of South Bend, which sadly is no more. And this is down You saw this color discrepancy here because I had couple rolls processed by someone else unintentionally, and the color was horrible. I could correct it, but it's going to take time. The other color is these are all scanned with the Pacific Image 5000 scanner, which will scan 100 slides at a time. And the color is fairly good. I haven't done any real color correction. Now, any questions?
No questions.
Okay, now we jump to Canada. The Niagara, St. Catharines, and Toronto. They had a pretty, robust freight operation, but I came to ride the interurban. This is at one end. There's a drawbridge here. There's the interurban car in the distance. So I think the order of this is not what I thought it was, but anyway, they ran these. Is this this is I think ex Montreal and Southern counties. This car, we were there twice. It came in the winter and had to use some Ansco chrome, and they ran from Welland to Port Colborne, where the drawbridge was, through Thorold, and so it's just a regular old interurban, and the driver in the front, or the motorman in the front, and they were using these cars when I was there first time, and these came from, I think, Montreal also, but I don't have that written down here. So this is I think in Thorold, and then there was bridge and a couple of points. It took a long time to get a track map of this, which I now have, to figure out where these pictures were taken. But the Welland Canal, or the old Welland Canal, there's a lot of this, some of this has been filled in. They've changed everything. This is where they crossed the Canadian National. And I was able to get out of the car and take the pictures because the motorman had to flag it manually. He had to get out, take a look, get in, run the car, get out, so on. This is crossing the Canadian National. So here we are, and I believe in Thorold, at the station where the line ends. The one end, and originally there was line went into St. Catharines and further. Another railway seldom visited is Niagara Junction. We didn't see it operate, but we flew through there long enough to take some pictures. And they had older and newer freight motors that stayed operating for quite a while, and we didn't see it run. Another power plant related railroad. Now we're going to go to Toronto. These are the original rapid transit cars on Yonge Street. So when I got there were, I don't know, 11 or so lines. A couple of them, Gilbert is the first one to close. Gilbert and Rogers Road ran off of Bloor Street, and they eventually succumbed, and Bloor Street, of course, later was converted to subway, but Gilbert was still running, and Rogers Road ran longer. These were short lines that didn't go. They connected with the Bloor Street line, and I think that's all that they did. The Bloor Street line had the ability to run MU, and now I don't remember. I think this is a car from somewhere else. Somebody's going to have to fill that in because
Birmingham.
Birmingham. That's what I thought. And they'd added, or at least these had couplers, so some of them were MU.
Right.
And this is another on Bloor, a later Toronto car, the Ace, one of the later classes. they had a rail grinding car, which I saw even I saw this in the 70s, still running. And the Kingston Road line had Peter Witz, and I don't know why I don't have them here. Bathurst had a lot of Peter Witz running when I was first there. And gradually, as lines closed, the Peter Witz, fell out of service. But they were in beautiful shape, most of them. They had a good selection of pre-war PCCs, and Kansas City cars. Of course, some of those ended up in San Francisco, not very successfully, but they ran long enough so I could get pictures of them. And then I think we're Witchwood. So you could see that the number of Peter Witz they still had. Now, you asked about color. This was Kodachrome X, which they came out with an ASA 25 Kodachrome, and the colors are just not the same. You can see this is a much more ultramarine blue than the other. It doesn't have that Kodachrome. And then they came out with Kodachrome 25, which is a little better. This is an early regular Kodachrome on the DuPont line down by the waterfront. And this loop at City Hall and on the Dundas line. The network has gotten quite simplified compared to what it was when I was there, but they did add the restore the line on, a couple of lines, but a lot of the lines that ran north-south disappeared when they built the Bloor subway. Any questions?
No questions.
Okay, good. Oshawa Railway, we didn't see it run, but here it is. And we had this big switching operation for the General Motors car plant, basically. And a lot of beautifully maintained freight motors. GE, Baldwin, and a couple of odd pieces of work equipment. And as I said, we just came through. It was one of those weekend trips. We wanted to go to the Niagara St. Catharines before they shut it down, and we stopped in these places on the way back. The weather this is February. The weather wasn't the best either, but it was good here. Now, Ottawa, which is tragic, but one of my favorite. They had no modern equipment, but this is downtown, right near the railroad station, the Parliament and everything. They had these wonderful, they had some more modern post-war cars. I didn't see those running. The 815, 809. Britannia was quite long, the A line, and ran a good distance on private right-of-way out of, and this is up on the B line of Bank, which was a line that ran sort of around a loop through a neighborhood. And then the Ottawa, I don't think there was as much money in Ottawa, at least that I could see as I saw in Toronto or Montreal. This is on the S-Laurier line. They had a couple lines that ran out of town to the west and then turned south. This is one of them. And then Holland was the other end of the B line. X meant that the car was kind of run as directed and would go to different places depending on what it said on the roll sign. There's another view of one of the Ottawa cars in that same area. And then this is at the car house. And this was a work car of some kind, number 6. I assume that got to a museum, but I don't know. And there's one of their buses in the background that they typically used. And this is some work equipment out at Britannia. And now Montreal, I didn't get there in time to ride the Lachine line. Now Montreal had this habit of ripping up the track before taking down the wire. I don't know why. Maybe so they could get a truck in there. But this line to the right, I didn't bring a picture of that, was still a steam operated commuter line that changed to electric and then ran through tunnel to get to the station downtown. So Montreal, the first time I got there, I had about 12 lines separated into 3 different areas because they had abandoned the core of the downtown, all the connectivity. So they had to go by bus to get to these islands of traction. In some cases, the outer part of a line. This is at where the Outremont line came together with the number 17 line. And Garland, I think it was called. You can see the cars from 17 backed up. Outremont was where the PCCs were running until they closed it. And the Millen line ran only in private right-of-way and then connected with the shuttle. So this is where people changed from the bus to the streetcars. Now, the Millen line was the home of some of the ex-Springfield cars like this. These cars were got from Springfield, Massachusetts when they closed. And there, you could tell the center window is wider. Here's a Springfield car and a regular Montreal car. And they didn't have headlights. They had these little things that put a little light on the front of the car. But the last thing to be converted were these lines like this that were a lot of private right-of-way. This is where the Millen line ended, and I think it's 44. This is, I got here twice. This is in the snow. And the shuttle line is coming in from see it just behind the front of the streetcar, which the 24 Millen, let's see if I got the number of the other one. I don't remember it. 40. So that line ran single-ended cars because it had a loop at both ends. Millen had to use double-ended cars because it had been truncated rudely in the middle. And the Papineau line was one of these north-south lines that ran, I'm not sure it ever went directly downtown. So I think this was still a complete line. And there was a couple of groups of lines that ran like this. There's Papineau in the snow. And same place. Now, this snow was in the day after Thanksgiving. So this was a November snow. And here's Papineau again, where they had a Y. They had to do a backing move here. And it's another view of Papineau. This is really the first time I'd seen snow like this. I'd been in the Sierras and seen real snow, but I hadn't seen anything like this. This is on the Blurry line, I think. It's another line that had a couple of these lines joined together and had a common terminal. And that's one of the major museums. I don't know which one, but that. And here's where the Blurry line ended. There's another picture of it caught a little bit of traffic. And a bus in the background. Van Horn was another line, 96, and it had its own. I'm not even sure these were even connected at this toward the end. Now the cars from Outremont went to the Rosemont line, the PCCs. So these were only used for a few months before the system closed in the spring of 1959. So any questions? Anybody still there? Is
everybody, you still have 96 people there. No questions again.
Okay.
One of our board members is from Quebec, and he's been adding commentary in the chat. So
yeah,
we're good.
All right, so Quebec in 1958, I went up. This was again a day, a couple days after the day before I got to Montreal, or the day after, and there was a sign outside when I got the train that said 7 or said 6. That turned out to be 6 degrees Fahrenheit. But there was the interurban line that ran to St. Anne de Dupree, and it was actually a Canadian national line, and they were running some older equipment and mostly these newer cars as seen on the turntable here at Quebec City. You could see a Canadian national baggage car in the background. Uh, and they also had a freight operation. So it was originally the Quebec Railway Light and Power Company. So some things were labeled CN and some were labeled the other.
Okay, Clark, let me cut in. I missed in the chat the Canadian, I'm talking about Andrew Ludasi. He did have a question. Andrew, I don't know if I can. Why don't you put it in the chat? Because I've actually muted everybody right now. So,
Yeah.
so go ahead. I'll catch you on the next.
Yeah, you can ask them to unmute, but anyway, let's keep moving.
Yeah, keep moving.
I was able to use Kodachrome a little bit. You see the difference. This is again still in Quebec City, and then this is out in the near the end of the line. This is not the end of the line, but there's one station or so, and they were running freight, and they had a maintenance facility here with stub switches. There are 2 freight trains passing. And then they had the passenger service. And thankfully the cars were warm on the inside. Yeah, this is at the far end of the line. I could see a yard. Okay, this would be a good break point.
Okay.
I think I have to write a whole script for this to go through some of these, but I'll do the best we can. Anything in the chat? So it's an overnight ride. It was in 1958 from Montreal to Boston, but you had to change at either White River or Wells River Junction because they had done away with the through trains. So now we're in Boston. This is the elevated Charlestown elevated we're standing on, and the green line in front of the old North Station and in front of the old Boston Garden and Hotel Madison. That was imploded. So, and this is the main line elevated with the equipment. I got 57, 58. I don't have any pictures. Well, I do have a picture actually. So, the older equipment, there were still a couple trains running in rush hour, but but the newer trains. This is taken at Everett Shops. That the station at Everett was on the ground, and this is where the elevator is ending, coming to the ground. And the older elevated train is there and probably go in service during rush hour, as I did ride them. This is the Cambridge-Dorchester line. We're at Andrew. The back car of the train was one of 4 cars that were painted for the South Shore extension and had transverse seats put in, similar to what the 1500s and 1600s had originally before they were screwed up. This is the view at near the old actually this is probably at Savin Hill. You notice the old colony was still in place. Now the old colony only has 1 track because they took space for the red line to run on separate tracks with that flying junction. Now we have the problem of getting the old colony back to being double track railroad because you can't run enough trains what they've got. on it. So this is on the Longfellow Bridge. For a period of time, it didn't last very long, thankfully. They had A trains and B trains like Chicago, but Boston did not have enough stops to make that really viable. And it wouldn't save that much time. These cars were quite noisy. Now, this is one of the older cars where the doors are hung on the outside. Yeah. And then some of the newer cars are a little different, but they all are compatible with each other. And they ran until I think 1961. Then they were replaced by the first iteration of newer cars. This is the yard at Harvard. There's actually a platform here that they could use to unload fans to go to the Harvard football games, which they used as the horribly sharp curve to get onto the into the Harvard station. Now they moved the Harvard station, but they have a horribly sharp curve to get into the Harvard station still, but it runs in the opposite direction. This is at Ashmont. The Mattapan-Ashmont line, by this time, because they closed the Blue Hill Avenue line, no longer connected to the system. And when I first got there, they were using all electrics. I noticed there's no MU equipment on them to operate the Mattapan-Ashmont. It's unfortunate that they've taken this loop out. You still see the trolley bus wiring. I think the trolley buses may have just ended here, but this is another view. This is a view at Mattapan on a nice March day. And this is a view of the Mattapan-Ashmont line at the Neponset River as it's crossing from Milton to the left into Boston. The Type 5s, there were about 7 or 8 Type 5s that were kept to operate, run as directed service from Northeastern, and also to operate trippers outbound from Blandford Street by Kenmore because the Watertown line was overcrowded. And they found late in the game that they could get streetcars from Dallas, which they proceeded to do. So this is during the transition at the end of 1958, early 1959, where the Type 5s were being replaced by the Dallas cars. Interesting, the 5734 ended up in the ownership of Seashore and is still actually on the property at Boylston Street Station and was used for many, many, many fan trips. But this one, I don't believe this one's a fan trip. It might be. This is 5706, which also exists. This is the one that's owned by the PSRA. And that car is getting ready to cross over. There's actually a third track for them to lay over, but it's crossing over here. And then the cars will sit in this middle pocket track. And then when they're needed in the subway, they were sent in. This is on the Arborway line down at the corner of almost to the Civil War Monument on Center Street. This is at Arborway. The Type 5s are coming in at the end of the rush hour when they're no longer needed. They came in and then they had to be parked here at the operator's lobby, and then they get put away by the guys in charge of doing the yard shifting, who we got to know. He liked to sell pies, so he had the local rail fans move the cars around the yard for him. This is another picture of Arborway when it still had the service car, Type 5, and there's one of the original Tremont cars, which actually got upgraded to run the Riverside line. They could not do MU either. Oops. And there's a view going of the track under the elevated to go to Lotus Place, which was the other end of this, and the elevated. And there was a bunch of, the T was buying, the MTA was buying these fishbowl buses at the time. So the 3030 ended up in a sad state for many years, but here it was operating just fine. This is the tunnel portal for Tremont, and originally for the line to South Boston. Originally, the Tremont Street line ran to Eggleston. Here, they're going to Lenox Street only. And they used mostly older cars, like the 3003. This is at, I don't know, somewhere around the picture. Actually, near Castle Square. Some of this stuff got torn down for Castle Square housing development. And they used all electric sometimes also. And this is Northampton Street, where you can see the remains of track work for the Massachusetts Avenue Dudley line, which now is Nubian Square. The Dudley line ran on Northampton Street from Columbus because Chester Square was had a park in the middle, and it was a high income section. Now the south end has completely changed. Now most of these, you can't buy anything, a building here for less than about $3 million, I don't think. This is the Type 5. Now this is a fan trip at the Lenox Street Yard in front of the old sand house, which originally I think was a gasometer. And this is a car coming into, and you can see the tracks used to continue on. This yard was rebuilt very quickly, but only stayed in use for about 6 years, 5 years. And then before they got rid of it and just made it all bus. This is for a period of time, for a few months, they ran a shuttle just from this point, which is the tunnel portal in Bay Village, to Boylston. And so if anybody riding a bus had to get off here and ride the shuttle to Boylston, one stop. And red in the background means it's going to rain. That's on the John Hancock building. And then they just ran in on one track. And I don't know, I think they just had one car on this. Now we jump to the Beacon Street line. We're at Coolidge Corner. This is typical of how the line used to look, with the picture window cars. As soon as the Riverside line opened, the picture window cars were moved. And people had to do with slightly older cars. This is a picture on the very hilly Commonwealth Avenue line. Rush hour trains were 3 cars. And this is near Washington Street. In fact, that's the traffic signal at Washington Street, which crosses. Washington Street has streetcar on it, but that ended at Beacon Street. It didn't come up this far. This is the turnback at Watertown after the Type 5s had ceased to service it. It's an outbound B-line or Boston College car, and an inbound, I'm guessing, our Watertown car. The 3100s usually ran on the Watertown line. This is another picture of Watertown opposite the Armory, which is near Braves Field. Braves Field Loop was still operational in those days. There's another picture at Union Square. At one time, the Union Square to Somerville, the Union Square Alston streetcar ran, was called the Union Square to Union Square streetcar, but that was long ago. But there was still the remains of a loop here that they could use. I never saw it used. See the wire going off in the distance. And now this is one of the Type 5s inbound for a tripper at the corner of Park and Tremont. Not the Park and Tremont in downtown Boston, but the Park and Tremont in Newton. So this is just crossed the turnpike from Newton Corner as inbound. Now we go to the Watertown. We're in North Cambridge. You can still see where the tracks went to the left. This is on the North Cambridge on the lines that go to Watertown, went to Watertown and get to okay, so we're on the Waverly, and this is North Cambridge. You notice the trolley bus wire is already in place for the replacement of this with trolley bus. That's what they did, and it became the last trolley bus operation in Boston. This is at Waverly. This whole loop and this overpass and so on had only been in service for a few years. They built an overpass all over the Boston, Maine, or depressed that, and then spent all that money, and then they abandoned the money that they used for the moving the streetcar tracks become stranded investment. This is in Watertown, near Watertown Square. I was approaching the bridge that goes to the Watertown Car House. This is the work to connect the Riverside line with the Beacon Street line, and this is Reservoir Car House. And so for that weekend, obviously, Reservoir Car House couldn't be used, and they ran the Beacon Street cars up to Boston College to turn, which they could do by running up Chestnut Hill Avenue. So as soon as this was only a few months before the line opened. It's not like now where you have to test something for 2 years before you open it. This was all in there and done. I didn't even know that they were doing this when I got to Boston in the beginning of 1958. By the spring, they had this under construction. And by that summer of 1959, they opened the line. This is not long after they opened the line. This is a H.H. Richardson station at the golf course near Riverside, and this is a three-car train. They did have, because they did it so much on the cheap, they did have some problems. They had to rebuild the track eventually because of welded all the rail joints, and that didn't work out as well as they'd hoped, because they kept a lot of the surface problems. They welded them into place. This is the Riverside Station. It's new in 1959. So one of the Type 3 plows. Okay, any questions?
No, you're just getting more kudos about how great your photography and conversion is considering the age of these images. So
Yeah, well,
other than
thank
that,
you.
no questions.
Yeah, this is Punmont Mills. I only had a couple pictures here. Sip Clark and I stopped in here and saw it, and I think they were moving back and forth, but if they use this boxcar to move stuff, I don't know. But this is in Taftville, Connecticut. So this is one of those one-shot wonders as far as the show is concerned. I didn't put the other picture. This is a Connecticut company car that was dieselized, and then that was in Hartford, and that where an old yard was. I can't give anybody who kept me the exact intersection, so I could add it to the metadata. But I don't know how long this persisted, but that was the last vestige of the Connecticut company. It's the only vestige I ever saw. The Grafton and Upton Railroad was another ex-interurban, and as far as I know, I think they're still going strong. But they was a pretty good operation when we saw it. Now, New York City Transit Authority. Unfortunately, that's gotten short shrift. I did take some Myrtle Avenue slides, but I don't know where they are. This was taken from a recruiting trip that New York Transit Authority wanted to talk to some civil engineering students from MIT about going to work for them. So we went down there, and got a kind of a good view of, what things. We took a tour of the shops here and stuff like that. But it's hard to get otherwise to get, ground level shots of subway cars. Okay, another one-shot wonder. New York City subway. There's only a couple places when I was there that you could take shots of Kodachrome, and this is one of them at where they have the grade crossing. And then I think at the end of the line, you could take shots. But it was, it just had to keep moving. So Philadelphia, unfortunately, the number 6 line had just been truncated. That right of way to the right is where it used to go, and out past the where it ended up. And but I did get there. And then the 23, of course, this is downtown. Never did figure out if I got to the actual end of the line in South Philadelphia because I had the 2 loops. Then I tried several times. This is at the end of the Darby Eden shuttle. This is the shuttle car. One of the few such things left other than the one in Montreal. And then 36 line, one of the subway surface lines. Subway surface lines were in a little better shape, but all of the other material I have on Philadelphia, the other lines, the 50 and so on and so forth, they're all more modern. So there should be some more older shots, but I don't know where they are. But the red arrow lines I focused on a little more. The of course was 69th Street Terminal with the Brill liner, and another Brill liner, 1939. The other was 1932, and car headed for either Media or Sharon Hills. Okay. Springfield was a cutback, still is, I think. I think they've added more double track, but they would run cars not all the way to Media. They would turn back. This isn't Media. And apparently the car is going to loop and then go to Sharon Hills, but or maybe they're just not paying attention. And this is on the, anyway, on the street trackage to Sharon Hills. Hope I've got this right after all these years. And this is an excursion with the 76 and the 66. Now we're on the, this track is gone. This is on the line to Ardmore. And they had single and double track. This is now a lot of this is a busway. But I thought it was an interesting line. I did also go out to Westgate Hills, but I've got some pictures of the shop, but not of the cars sitting there. But that was the cutback from the Westchester. This is where the Ardmore line crossed Philadelphia, the line to Norristown. And this is a view from the Norristown line. And another view of the Norristown line in happier days. And the older 160 series cars were used like the Bryn Mawr as a cutback after they'd closed the branch. And then at the shops, they had few pieces of work equipment. One of the older original cars. Now, question time.
No questions. Just again, great show, but other than that, no questions.
Okay, good. Good. Let's say, as the East Germans say, don't ask questions. So now, and we're in Johnstown. This building is still there because I visited Johnstown 5 or 7 years ago, and the bus company still uses it now. The line, Ben's Creek line, was not operable, but it was at the end of the Southmont, not Southmont. I'll think of it in a minute. They had this bridge from the car house for going outbound. The one nice thing about these cars is, well, actually though, this is a double truck Bernie. It wouldn't fit on the line, the Oakmont line. But the interesting thing was that I could charter the streetcar for $7 an hour. and then they would let me operate it in most places. So they could also charter a PCC, but operating it, not so much. Although I knew how at that point, some point. Yeah, this is as we proceed out. Johnstown was a nice little operation. This is before they started putting up the trackless trolley wire. And then this is actually on the line to Coopersdale when it was not running all the way to Coopersdale. This is up by a steel mill. You can see the railroad and everything just on the Franklin line. And this was after they restored the track over the bridge, that they had to rebuild the bridge, and they had restored the track. And I was in service for couple of years. This is the track after it had been restored. 350, this was one of the cars Johnstown bought for themselves. This car was slightly narrower than the double truck Bernie and could go to Oakmont, which was a little spur off the Moralville line. This is on the line to Moralville and Coopersdale. Steel mill is still operating in the background. And this is only going, well, this was my charter, so I could park the car anywhere I wanted and take a picture. So I did. This is on the near the end of the Franklin line. Yeah, not so active steel mill in the background. This is a single track to Franklin. There's a loop at the bottom of the hill. And then Moxham was the car house. This is a bridge just south edge of downtown where the lines of Roxbury and the car house and originally the truncated Ben's Creek line ran. This is on the Roxbury line. They had this right of way. Again, this is a picture. This was done by the old scanner. Well, it's too bright, but that can be fixed. I just haven't done it. And then Southmont, PCCs never ran to Southmont. That was a line that ran up a branch off the Roxbury line that sort of ran up the hill up to a place called Southmont, it had just a stub, which had ceased to exist. There was maybe a block or two of it left. Ferndale, that's the other line that ran so it ran from this line. The lines ran through. There were actually 4 lines plus Coopersdale. I mean, not Coopersdale, Franklin. So 2 of the lines ran through Roxbury and Coopersdale and Ferndale and to Moralville, and then Franklin. And then there's a stub to Oakmont. Here we are. We're going to go to Oakmont today. And here we are. This is a place that when they put the PCCs in, it just got sort of neglected, but they never pulled the track up. But I think when a lot of the employment disappeared, the services that they might have run here were no longer, were too costly to operate, so they didn't. But this is the extreme remote end of the line past Moralville. Oops. And this is downtown they did have a trolley bus line that they put in the 40s that, but then when they converted the whole rest of the system to trolley bus for several years, and then is now nothing. So, any questions about Johnstown?
No questions.
Okay, Pittsburgh. Now we're at the Perrysville Car House. This is the lines. Well, I changed the order of these a little bit, but they're sort of in numeric order, and then they're not. The 10 and the 15 line ran in a major loop. The 8 Perrysville Avenue line ended here. And there were a bunch of other little minor lines. This is the Westview and 10 and 15. Fine View was another line, but only could run one way on it. It had a really steep, as typical of their track. You can see little you'd see vertical deviations. The surface is not great. They had one series of post-war cars, and then they had the 1600s, which were also these two 17s, and some of the 1600s were equipped for interurban operations. So this is the back of the yard at Perrysville. It had some older cars as work equipment. And Charles Street, that's a rear line. I did write it. And then here's the end of the Perrysville line. This is all on the north side of Pittsburgh. This is the other car house that they had. And the Woods Run and some of the other more minor lines ran out of here. So it's a little closer to downtown than Perrysville. Western Avenue, the 6th line. There was a bunch of, we don't have all the lines. They had so many lines. 18 Woods Run. There was not the 6th, but the line that connected with it actually ran above all of this on a high bridge. Not a good connection, but the Fine View was, as I said, single track. It was a big single track loop that ran up Perrysville Avenue and then turned off and then ran up to Perrysville Avenue and then back down the hill. Now we switched to the West End, which sadly is the first major mass abandonment. Well, they had just gotten rid of the 1, 4, and 5 line before I got there. But the 6 and the 13, which was, and others were all running. Now this is a 30, Craft and Ingham, there's a loop to the car house. There are 2 different ways to get there. But this line ran a long distance on this street next to the Pennsylvania Railroad up there, and Pittsburgh and whatever underneath it. So to get to the West End, Island Avenue was one of my favorite shots. Was one of the lines. They used to go further into a place called Swickley, which was out on an island in a river, but that was gone. And they had the Schoenville shuttle, which was run with old cars. That's gone. Was already gone. This is on the private right-of-way, 27 Carnegie and the 28, the Heidelberg line used this. It's hard to find where it was, but it's there's, because there's barely any traces of it. The 27 Carnegie line ran, you got to go back forward, sorry. Ran on street mostly down to, and then the 28 Heidelberg ran on some right-of-way in a more interesting route. Now the Heidelberg line is actually near the car house. So the Heidelberg line had, nice passing sidings. This one was symmetrical, which you don't normally see. And so we'll wait here for the inbound car. Now this is actually at the Ingram car house. This is a car coming down the hill. Remember that right of way going up the hill? And then it come down, and then there's another route to get to this point. This is the view. A lot of, not the newer equipment, but a lot of the equipment that was that they didn't want to use anymore, they left stranded here after they closed the Point Bridge, and they had to put the new bridge in service without tracks. This is Craft and Ingram. So the 30 line ran the other way towards Pittsburgh. As a big, as I said, big loop. You'd have to look at the map. Now we're in Forbes, which was at one time the most famous thing that happened recently in Forbes was the bridge they built to replace the bridge they had when they closed the trolleys collapsed. But this is Forbes, and I think Craig. Well, anyway, doesn't matter. They had a bunch of lines on Forbes, and then they had a bunch of lines on Third. Forbes is like one of their major routes to get to the western part of the city and area. This is downtown on the 82 Lincoln line, which was a line that ran on the Pittsburgh side of the river, but to the west, to the east. 64, we're in East Pittsburgh, which is some distance from downtown. And East Pittsburgh to Wilkinsburg. I can't find any of this now on Google. I'm not sure any of this survives, any of the background. Trafford line, interesting, had been overcome. They let people run private buses, and they would run right before the streetcar. So the Trafford line was down to one trip a day. And it ran, it connected with the 87 line, which this is out on the line. Since I was the only rider on the car, the operator was happy to let me do photo stops. This is out the line to Stratford, which is connected with the West Penn. Now, the 56 line was the last of the McKeesport lines to survive. The 98 was a line that ran from Glassport to McKeesport, and including at one point going through a spiral interchange. But it was just horribly remote. The city, McKeesport kind of was like an independent trolley system almost. With this is at Kennywood Park. One of the first abandonments that happened after I got there was the 60 and the 68 line to McKeesport. The 60 line to west to East Liberty closed, which meant that they no longer could serve Kennywood Park, and they no longer. That was one of the many lines that ran through East Liberty, but it took one. It was kind of 60 was a crosstown line. This is up in Wilkinsburg, in that general area. The streetcars ran through here on this sort of maze of little streets, and to get to East Pittsburgh. And again, not all of these locations can be verified because a lot of these houses are gone. This is the end of the Beltsuber line. Now that line ran through around the South Hills Tunnel. The lines through the South Hills Tunnel ran straight through, but then up the Ardmore, whatever they call that line now, the bypass line, Beltsuber branched off of that, continued up the hill. I think there was a incline not far from here. Carrick, that was another line that ran through the South Hills Tunnel. It probably should not have been abandoned. This is towing a car from Homewood Shops to the South Hills. The guys, the crew operating the car were kind enough to offer me a ride with them to the South Hills, so I was happy to take it. It's the only time I got to ride on one of those. This is downtown, actually near Penn Station, but maybe a little further out. And this is, they were doing some major track work. Yeah, this is at Penn Station. So they were still maintaining the system in 1959 or 1960, but then after the Transit Authority took over, that was the end of that. Sharpsburg Osmonwall, that's another set of lines that got cut. 96, was a crosstown line. 94 ran into town. This is the bridge, new 62nd Street Bridge. So as soon as that bridge got rebuilt, this line was done. Okay, any questions? Well, this is not a complete visit to Pittsburgh, but that's really hard to do. And
yeah, no questions.
Okay, Shaker Heights, I was only there a couple times. Was there when these are Pullman cars, and they really hadn't gotten, well, okay, Sam Ewing was something else, but that maybe they're compatible with the St. Louis, the cars from St. Louis. I'm not sure, because they were getting cars from St. Louis to replace these cars. I did get to ride on one of these trains of these cars during the rush hour. They're still running some of the conventional cars this is at the one of the yards that they maintain for equipment. So yeah, so this was kind of a fun ride, but they're only running a few trips with these when I got there. Okay, Baltimore. This is the line to Sparrows Point, which I saw for part of one day. That was just the last day. And this is bridge to Sparrows Point. The line did not connect with the rest of the system. It had taken the line from where it terminated nearer to town and bust that. But so this goes to Pratt and Grundy, and where there was a car house. So this line was a sort of like a Mattapan Ashmont, but a little longer, I think. Work car. I think this is somebody put that sign on there. And this is the car house. So I was there and I had to go back to Washington. I couldn't wait around to ride the last car. I mean, because I was staying in Washington, D.C. And this is the end of the 8. This is a really long line. And a lot of Towson to Catonsville. And we're at the Catonsville end. And the 8 line was also reasonably long, not as long. So we go. The Towson had this right of way at the end with really rickety track. Now the 15 line, the overlay line, ran out street just kind of, I thought, what direction? Probably east or north. And then the overlay line, yeah, here it is downtown. It's sort of hard to determine from the maps what route that they actually used, but I'm pretty sure I have it down. The tower in the background to the left with the clock on it, that's quite famous. But I don't recall the circumstance. It might have been like for a soap company. So Walbrook Junction was the shorter end of the line. The longer end of the line was out in this hill and dale, quite fast operation, street operation. And a car house. Now, any more questions? By the way, Baltimore only had 2 lines after the
No, the people are throwing out different answers at what that tower was, either bromo seltzer or Bayer aspirin. I'm gonna
I
guess
think it was Bayer aspirin, but I'm not sure. I don't remember now, but it's famous. Okay, now we're at Washington, D.C., a really tragic place. This is the 20 line, which ran along the Potomac River, kind of to the northwest. And it ran to an amusement park, among other things. It wasn't the heaviest line, but it was interesting. This is where they changed from trolley pole operation to conduit operation. So they have a plow pit there. They have to fit the plow and then make sure, and then they go without using a trolley pole. This is where they join the number 30 line, and the 30 also had trolley operation. Here's the plow pit for that, and Connecticut Avenue. I'm trying to remember. This is the further out on the number 30 line. Just about everything around the Washington, D.C. lines, at least in this area, is all still there. So 30 in the downtown area, closer to the Capitol. The 30 ran to the other corner of the district, down to the southeast corner on Pennsylvania Avenue. Southeast. This is where the 30 line goes to Navy Yard. There's a junction here, but these two tracks that curve are not shown on the DC map that was put out, given to rail fans, but it's there. This is on the going to 17th and Pennsylvania Southeast. This was kind of in a with trees and in a kind of a mall on Pennsylvania Avenue. This is the only car. Now this is up at the end of probably the 60 or 60 line. This is the only car that had this ductwork on top. Otherwise, the cars were, except for the silver sights here, totally unair conditioned. This is a car house on 54, and Washington, D.C. had car houses with transfer tables, which accounts for them being one window short on the PCC cars. This is at that's the end of the 60. The other one must have been the end of the 50. The 60 line was a fairly short line that ran in not so great neighborhoods, ran north-south, basically. It's one of the surviving lines because they got rid of all the lines. They had trolley wire first. 42 Mount Pleasant, that was a line that went between the Capitol and Union Station and then into some neighborhoods. I guess I characterize that to the east. This is coming, you can see the Capitol in the background. You can see the ridership, the number of people on the cars. So they needed to have bigger transit vehicles. Of course, everybody worked the same shift. This is the 70s group of lines ran up to the northeast corner of DC and had a couple of branches, 74, and then they ran to 7th and Wharfs and other places on the other end. This is one of the transfer tables, one of the few places I could get to a point where I could see one. You can see that in the foreground. The 82, these lines quit in 1958 or 59. 58, I think. The 80 and 82 lines was the only line that still ran into Maryland to Branchville. And unfortunately, they got closed. This is a single track. At one time, it ran from Branchville to Beltsville, wherever that is. But the 82 had this piece of single track at the end. And you could see the former line to Beltsville. On the other end, Potomac Park. So we lost those two lines fairly quickly. So the only time I saw them, but I did get to ride a fan trip on them too. So it must have been 59. They brought the 303 out for a fan trip. And there's 80. And this is the car barn at Eckington, which was the closed when they had closed the 80 and 82. That's one of the few places once they had trolley wire. This is the 1053, which unfortunately is now lost, an experimental pre-PCC car. We took that for a fan trip up to, we're on the 74 Soldiers Home. There's another branch off the 70s group of lines. And then there's the Silver Sightseer, which unfortunately is lost. And that's it's air conditioned. Nice ride. This is what the inside looked like. So, and the 1053 had just incandescent lighting. So here's a view facing the Capitol on Pennsylvania Avenue. Another thing that happened when they were getting rid of streetcars, this car you see is number 7 and painted over the destination. I don't know why they did that. So this car is destined to go to Sarajevo. So we'll take a slight deviation from our normal trip and show this is a car at the station at Sarajevo. This is back in the days when it wasn't all that safe to take traction pickers in Yugoslavia. And this is there's a main line there. This is also all before the the city was all bombarded. This is another Washington, D.C. car. It was their main cars that they had after they converted this from a narrow gauge system. And they took some of the cars and made them into articulated cars. So here's the case. And then there's one of the newer Tatra K2 cars. This is a big loop that they ran through the eastern part of downtown. And notice that they're using pantographs. So, all right. Any questions?
No questions.
Okay. Now, ask them how many people have been to Sarajevo. So anyway, Atlanta had a little traction operation for their pole yard. And Skip Clark's uncle or something worked there, so I got to see. And they had this at the power station. Otherwise, was a place for old trolley buses, and I did take a couple pictures. There's track in this picture, but this were the newer trolley buses, and this is one of their old trolley buses. So I didn't really chase the trolley bus system, but I did take some pictures here. Now, we are closing in on New Orleans. This is Canal Street, of course, before it was resurrected. And you notice in this picture, there's a trolley bus and a regular bus in this picture. This is when they were still running. And cars were in beautiful shape. It hadn't really been revealed that they were going to close Canal, but this is what it looked like. This is generally the same area. They had quite dense service on Canal Street. Every couple of minutes, it seemed like there would be a streetcar. And this is out on the reservation on Canal Street. I don't know how similar it looks now. What they used for poles, stuff like that. This is at the end of the canal, the cemeteries, the end of the Canal Street line, crossing over. And this is a canal in St. Charles car where they had the third track for the loop, or have the third track. I should say that track on the left never went away. This is on St. Charles, a well-known territory probably to many of you, and a monument in the background. And this is at the end. Note that there's a trolley bus there, which they're not there now. And I did stop at the yard, and that's their place where the trolley buses lived. And now this picture is notable. This is the entrance, one of the entrances of the car house, is notable for the remains of some dual gauge between wide gauge and standard gauge, because a couple of the lines out in this area were still standard gauge, including maybe Canal Street, and then were later converted to wide gauge, but they left this. I think this is probably gone by now on Carrollton. So this is the lower end of Canal Street. Cars are coming and going. And there'd typically be 2 or 3 cars here at the same time. And they had manual switches. And that's the walkway to the ferry, which if you haven't done it, is an interesting ride. So with that, we are done.